Hi guys, welcome to Mendoza Makes. I'm Michelle Mendoza, and today we're talking about culinary ratios. So culinary ratios have been on my list of things I want to make a video about, and someone actually requested it in the comments on one of my other videos. So thank you, Kat Crandall, for the request. While we're on the subject, if anybody has anything that you're like, oh, I really want to learn how to do this, but I don't really understand it, or maybe you want some advice or something like that, feel free to send me a message or leave a comment. To be honest, this is all stuff that I want to learn myself anyway, and I really enjoy researching everything and learning everything myself. I'm still learning, so I don't know everything, but if it's anything that I can help with, I would love to. So let me know. Culinary ratios are very interesting. I actually didn't know that it was an actual thing, but I had been doing it for a really long time. If you've never heard the term ratio baking or culinary ratios before, it's basically a way to kind of replace measurements in recipes with a ratio instead. So you'll hear people or see written down things like 3 parts flour, 1 part water. Once you get the ratios down for the baseline of what you want to make, things like bread, cake, cookies, it's a lot of baking, but you can also use it for cooking too. Things like broth, soup, stew, sauce, things like that. It really opens up the door for you to put in your own creative twist to things, because it gives you the baseline and then you can put in whatever flavorings you want. If you know how to make the basics of bread, you can use that for literally every bread you make, and then just add whatever flavoring you want. You can do cranberry orange, cinnamon raisin, herbs. You can put lemon zest in there. You can put blueberries, zucchini, bananas, chocolate chips. I mean, you can make any kind of bread without having to look up a recipe for that. And it kind of changes the way that you look at recipes, because you'll start looking at recipes not for the instructions of how to make bread or how much flour you need, how much water, how much yeast, baking soda, whatever. You'll start looking at it instead for what the additive ingredients are. Like what flavor twist do they have in them for that specific type of bread, not looking at it for how to make bread. It really helps open the door for a lot of creativity and experimenting with different flavors, and it's really cool. It also makes scaling your recipes way easier. Instead of having to go through your recipe and split each one in half if you're reducing it, or multiply it if you're doubling it or something like that, you don't have to do the math of tablespoons and cups and stuff like that. All you have to do is reduce the ratio that you use, or increase it based on if you want to make more or less food at the end. So easy. Something that I forgot to mention here that I think is worth mentioning is that ratios are really meant for a way to measure ingredients when you already know the steps of how to make the dish. If you don't know how to make the dish, don't use a ratio, use a recipe, because the ratio literally is just like for bread, 5 parts flour to 3 parts water. That's it. You'll notice that other things like leavening and salt and seasonings and stuff are not included, because it assumes that you already know to add those things just by yourself. It doesn't tell you to do anything. There's no instructions included with ratios. It's literally just a ratio of this part to this part, and that's it. So if you're still needing the instructions and still needing that guideline, use a recipe instead. Let's take bread for an example. The ratio for making bread is 5 parts flour to every 3 parts water. What that means is for every 3 parts of water that you add, you're gonna add 5 parts of flour. When ratios say X part to every Y part of ingredients, they're using equal measurements. So like if I'm measuring in cups and I'm making bread, every 3 cups of water, I'm gonna add 5 cups of flour. If I wanted to make a larger batch, I would just increase the amount of water I use, because if I increase the amount of water, it's therefore going to increase the flour. That's why it makes it so easy to scale your recipes when you do it this way, because you don't have to do any math, really. You just increase the secondary ingredient, and because of that, that is going to affect the primary ingredient that you're using and increase that as well, increasing your overall yield. And the same thing if you're decreasing, the main ingredient will decrease as well, and you'll make a smaller batch. Then you just add in, like for bread, yeast or baking soda for your leavening, whatever that's going to be, depending on what type of bread you're going to be making. And then add any flavorings that you want. Maybe you want it to be a little bit sweeter, so you can add some sugar, or you're making cinnamon raisin bread, so you put in some cinnamon and some raisins. Or herb bread, lemon bread, blueberry bread, I mean like literally everything. You can also do the same thing with cookies. As long as you know the ratio to start with to make a basic cookie, you can put whatever flavoring you want in it. Like, you can make it whatever you want it to be. It's so cool. I know it's kind of nerdy to get excited about that, but it's exciting to me. I love it. I love being able to just experiment and see what I can come up with and make weird stuff. And usually it turns out pretty good. But for cookies, the ratio is 3 parts flour, 2 parts fat. So if you watch my cookie series, you'll know that the fat is shortening, oil, butter, and then 1 part sugar, because it's a cookie and you want it to be sweet, right? Using ratios is really ideal for making foods that have similar ingredients. So that's why it works so well with baking, and really you'll see it more in baking than in cooking, because a lot of baking is the same basic ingredients: flour, sugar, fats, water, or milk, some type of liquid to hydrate the flour. And that's basically it. Like cakes, cookies, pie dough, bread, you know, all these baking things are kind of, you can boil them all down to the same basic ingredients. So that's why ratios work really well for baked goods, because they mostly use the same stuff to make them. So it's really easy to make a ratio out of that and just kind of standardize it and use it for everything, and then just adjust it based on the specific type of something that you're making. But you can also use it for a few things in cooking that are pretty neat. Things like stock. Stock is 3 parts water for 2 parts of bones. That gets a lot kind of hard to measure out accurately because bones can be oddly shaped. So I really recommend using a scale for that. It'll be the most accurate if you're worried about the measurement. Things like simple syrup is 1 part water to 1 part sugar. So rice will always be 2 parts water to 1 part rice, because the rice is going to soak up the water. Like, that kind of makes sense. You can remember that one pretty easily. Something I learned while I was doing research for this video, I always do research for my videos. I want to make sure that I'm not spreading false information. I want to make sure that I'm giving information that's accurate and not teaching anyone wrong. So, side note, if you ever do find something that I have in my videos that's not correct, please let me know in the comments, because I will not take offense or anything. I really want to know, because I don't want to be telling anybody something that's wrong. So, side note. But something I learned while I was doing the research for this video is the ratio for a stew, like a pot roast or jambalaya or curry even. 10 parts protein to 1 part Mirepoix, which I didn't know what that word meant. Honestly, when I saw it, I was like, what is that? And so I went and I looked it up, and it's basically like the vegetable mix that you make, that you kind of fry, that's usually onions, carrots, and celery. I've made it before when I made jambalaya, but I kind of dug deeper because I was curious and I wanted to know more. But that that has its own ratio. The ratio for the Mirepoix is 2 parts onion to 1 part carrot to 1 part celery. You can also use a percentage. If you think of the whole finished dish with all the ingredients added as being 100%, then you can divide that 100% into the percentage of ingredients you're going to use. So for the Mirepoix, for example, the onion would be 50%, the carrots would be 25%, and the celery would be 25% as well, making up the whole 100, the finished dish. It helps me kind of visualize it sometimes as like a pie chart in my head. When I was doing my research for this, it also kind of led me into the whole of baking percentages, which if you've heard of that, that's a whole nother thing that I half understand. It's a little bit more math involved, it seems, and I was not great at math in school, so more research required. I'll put some of the most popular baking ratios and cooking ratios I found in the description down below if you guys want those. If I can just give them to you guys, I will give. If there are any specific ones that you guys are interested in, let me know in the comments and I'll see if I can find anything on them. I think that's it. Thank you again, Kat, for the request. If anybody else has any requests, let me know in the comments or send me a message. I'm also on Instagram now, @MendozaMakes. That is me. You will see pictures of food and dogs because that's my life. If you like this video or you learned something, give it a like. If you would like to learn more, subscribe to my channel. I upload every Friday. Thank you for watching and I'll see you next time. Bye!